I'm Malessa Rambarran.
And I'm Candice Milano.
Welcome back to Season 4 of the Buildup, presented by Brown Harris Stevens and Guaranteed Rate, where we discuss the secrets of building wealth through real estate.
Today we're sitting down with Andrew Freed, who is a real estate investor and a licensed real estate agent based in Massachusetts. He went from owning a single condo to building an entire multifamily portfolio. What makes Andrew's story really powerful is not just the properties he's acquired, but the systems he's used to scale and the strategies that he's used to recycle capital and grow faster than most people think possible. So whether you're just beginning your investing journey or you're trying to scale to the next level, Andrew's insights will give you both the inspiration and the practical playbook to make that happen.
So did you see that article in the Financial Times that New York City is converting a lot of office space into residential housing? I think the most since 2008. They've already converted over 4 million square feet into residential homes, which obviously we really need here in New York City.
So why not convert these buildings that aren't being used for very much needed housing?
Conversions are expensive and they're technically very complex, right? It's old office buildings and they have deep floor plates, limited natural light, and the plumbing that's nowhere near residential standards. So it's going to take a lot of work. Developers aren't really doing this out of charity, let's be honest, right? And most of these units will end up being very luxury. It's very high priced, and it's not really going to be the end all be all for, the shortage of housing here that we have in New York.
That's a policy problem, really. The city could implement incentives and zoning updates that would encourage developers to build mixed income conversions. And also, it is a very sustainable solution because you are repurposing existing buildings versus demolishing them and then rebuilding is a lot more materials, resource, and energy involved.
Right, but sustainability doesn't actually mean livability, right? Many office districts, they lack schools, parks, grocery stores. So it's really a sterile environment that you're really trying to recreate to be residential.
Yes, no, these are fair points as well. But usually what we see is when the residential conversion comes first and then more of those lifestyle amenities will follow. So if these projects are implemented and converted, we will start to see some of those, much needed schools, like you mentioned, and other important amenities added to the areas out to follow the new demand of, and really reviving parts of the city like Midtown and Financial District. So
yeah, those are the two neighborhoods that really a lot of the conversions are going on. And look, it's a really great step in the right direction, but it's not really a solved equation yet. I think, if the city gets the incentives right, like you talked about, and developers really prioritize livability versus profit, I do think it could reshape Manhattan's skyline and its soul, essentially.
Yes, we're really watching New York reinvent itself, which is what it does best. So
of course,
let's see how that turns out.
Yeah, I'm very excited at the prospect of having more inventory, because we as brokers, we are always talking about the lack of inventory here in New York City. So obviously it's really a great plan, but we just really want to see it done right.
For sure.
I'm Brian Scott Cohen, one of the top loan originators in the country and the #1 mortgage originator at Guaranteed Rate Infinity. Guaranteed Rate Infinity arguably has the most advanced tech in the industry. Our completely digital loan process makes it easy and efficient for homeowners, from a 15-minute pre-approval to the digital application and through closing. My team and I would love to help you get into the home of your dreams.
From residential and commercial closings to litigation, Romer DeBoss is your full-service real estate law firm. We blend big firm knowledge with boutique-level attention, delivering outcomes that exceed every expectation. Contact us at romerdeboss.com.
All right. So today we're joined by Andrew Freed, a multifamily investor and real estate agent who scaled from turning his first condo into a rental and building a portfolio by leveraging creative strategies, systems, and delegation. Andrew, welcome to the Buildup.
I am happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful, of course. But let's start with your journey. A lot of investors start small, but you took a condo and turned it into the foundation for a portfolio. Tell us how that began.
So I think it all began just like many people listening, getting sold the American dream, getting sold, if I get a good education, if I get a good job, if I get a good career, if I get a 6-figure salary, if I get a swanky condo in a city, I made it, right? Like I did my entire 20s and I committed time to doing that. I got my bachelor's from UMass Amherst. I got my master's from Emmanuel College. I got a job at the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard as a project manager. I made six figures. I got a condo in Boston. Like I did it all. But at the end of the day, like I really felt like I was trapped. I felt like I was in prison. I felt like, I was tied to that job, right? And then I ran across this beautiful book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that really opened my eyes to the power of real estate. And at that point, like I bought the condo 5 years ago and I was looking at my like Mint app and my net worth was $250,000. $200,000 came from this one bedroom condo. It took me 10 years to save up $50,000. And I was like, I am never going to reach financial independence that way. So that's when I decided to HELOC my one bedroom condo and start house hacking or buying multifamily properties in Worcester, Massachusetts with low down payment owner occupied loans, FHA loans, 5% down conventional, things like that. And I kind of scaled from there.
Wow. That is something that we all struggle with, or not all, but a lot of us do, where, we get sold this dream, like you said, and you work really hard towards it. And when you're there, it's not exactly what you thought it would be. And that's why real estate is so powerful and why we're here today to really understand how to unlock building wealth through real estate. And so you were able to do that. And can you talk to us a little bit more about how did you structure, you talk very quickly, like HELOCs and structuring all of that. I mean, for those who don't really understand, how did you actually implement that?
Sure. So, I think people have to understand this concept of return on net worth, right? Like, say if your net worth is in $1 million and $800,000 in a 401k that you can't touch until you're 65, like, you need to find ways to unlock that equity to utilize that to buy more real estate assets, right? So in real estate, you have this thing called equity, right? It's this beautiful thing that says your property's worth this much more on paper, but not in reality, right? And you can actually tap into that equity in different forms, right? You can tap into that equity in the form of a line of credit where the bank gives you essentially a giant credit card to take that loan out, to take that equity out in the form of a loan, right? You can tap into that equity in the form of a cash out refinance where you refi the property, you take more money out. You can tap into the equity in the form of 1031 into other properties, right? That's the power of real estate, is because you can utilize leverage, buy these assets at 20%, with the leverage, the equity multiplies exponentially and you could tap that to buy more and more and more real estate. And that's exactly what I did. My first condo, I got a HELOC, a home line of credit, where I tapped into $200,000 on essentially a giant credit card to buy property.
Yeah, that's really powerful information. That's exactly what a lot of people don't really understand. A lot of people save their whole lives to just get that American dream, like you said, to buy a house, right? Get that house and they're locked in forever, right? And they're paying that mortgage. But like you really explained the different ways of how you can really take that and scale and buy more property. And you touched on scaling a little bit, but that's where a lot of investors actually, they struggle. So how did you move from a couple of properties to managing such a larger portfolio? Talk to us about that process.
Sure. So, I think once people get the real estate bug and they get one under their belt, they're like, oh, I want more of this, right? So I just kept buying and buying and buying. I think after my first house hack, I ended up getting into a syndication as a limited partner. A syndication is when some sophisticated investors put a large asset together and they raise money from investors to take it down. And I was just a money partner, but that property sold for an 89% return a year later. And I took that money and I bought a 5-unit, a value add 5-unit with my partner. We split it 50-50. We bought it for $650. We put $50K into it. We refied it and $950, and we used that to buy more property. Along with that, I used my line of credit to house hack a couple more properties. I essentially got up to about 30 units. I ran out of my own cash, and I still had all these amazing deals come my way, and I figured I had to raise money from investors. At that point, I got on the Bigger Pockets podcast. I hosted the largest real estate meetup in my area. I was also one of the largest investor-focused agents in my area, so I just had a lot of kind of bridges leading to the same direction.
Yeah, that's really awesome. But talk to us about what systems or tools did you find were most critical in allowing you to scale without burning out?
Fantastic. So you bring up a lot of good points, right? Like what takes up a lot of our time as landlords, especially when we self-manage, right? One component is rent collection, right? So one of the biggest components I recommend is you get a software, right? And you require all of your tenants to do electronic payment. Even if you have to pay $1 or $2, it's like it's worth your time to be able to reconcile all of your payments in minutes versus having to take you, days or weeks. to do that, right? Like that's number one, right? Number two, like get really good bookkeeping or or good bookkeeping practices. Hire a bookkeeper, get an accounting software, but ultimately you need up-to-date profit and loss statements and balance sheets to determine whether this property is a profitable endeavor or not. Like ultimately, I could have $200,000 of equity in a property and it's giving me zero cash flow. It probably makes sense that I 1031 that, but if I don't have the financials, how am I going to understand that?
For sure. And you've also talked a lot about delegation as one of the ways that have helped you to scale. So what were some of the first tasks that you let go of, and how did that change your business?
So one of my favorite books is Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. I don't know if you've ever seen him. He's an incredible presenter as well. He's really big into AI right now, which I highly recommend people lean into. But in there, he has this exercise where, you do an energy audit, right? You take an energy audit of what do you do every single day, and what gives energy to you and what takes energy away from you. And the things that take energy away from you, you slowly work to either delegate or eliminate, right? You come up with systems or you come up with a people to take that off your plate, right? So for me, some of the first things I delegated was social media, right? I hired a social media marketing specialist in the Philippines. Accounting, I hired a bookkeeper, in the Philippines, right? So those were some of the beginning things I started to delegate. And then as I kind of advanced in my partnership sort of endeavors, I realized that the real way you scale in real estate is you understand where people's superpower is and where your superpower is, and leverage people in the right seat.
So scaling is exciting, but every deal carries risk. Let's talk about how you choose deals and manage downside. What type of multifamily deals do you focus on today, and why?
Yeah, so you bring up a lot of good points. And I think some ways to manage the risk is, some of the risk is high debt, right? Like that's one of the risk, and high expenses, right? And the other risk is potentially values going down, right? So some ways we actually mitigate that risk in the market that we buy is in Worcester, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. Value add multifamilies, we find multifamily assets at a 20 to 30% discount on a price per unit basis, right? So we're already buying at a deep discount. So that really mitigates the risk against market downside, right? And the other risk is interest rates, right? And the way we mitigate that is we buy in a high cap rate market. We buy in a 6.5, and we try to post stabilization, get them to a 10% cap rate or a 10% cash on cash return, right? And the reason why that mitigates risk is when your interest rate is 6 and your property is bringing in a 10, the cash from the property can support the debt, versus some other areas where they've ran into problems like Phoenix, Arizona, where the cap rate's 4, the interest rate's 6, and the cash flow on the property can't support the interest.
Yeah, right. Those are two really great points of how to mitigate those very common risks that happen with multifamily investments or real estate in general. And, we all learn a lot from our mistakes, sometimes more than from our wins. So do you have an example of a deal that maybe didn't go as planned and the lesson that you took away from that?
Absolutely. So, one deal that comes to mind for me was like one of my second or third deals that I raised for. It was a 32 in Lancaster, South Carolina, right? So on paper, this deal made sense all day. I think we were getting 32 units for around $2 million, around 60-ish a door. They rented for $1,200 per unit. 1980s build, garden style brick building. It was beautiful, really beautiful building in a really nice area. Lancaster, 40 minutes south of Charlotte, one of the fastest growing areas. So it made sense, right? So, we ended up raising for that deal, going into that deal, and some of the downside risk we didn't take into account was, first of all, we had to hire a third-party manager. We normally self-manage, so that was very challenging. On top of that, insurance doubled and taxes doubled. And by the way, we budgeted for maybe turning half the units. We had 26 of 32 units get turned. Right. So we just, all this uncertainty with this property, like we worked our way through it. It worked out. The property ended up cash flowing very well right now, and we're currently working on selling it. But, we definitely had to halt cash flow distributions while we got over, the higher expenses than what we expected.
Got it. So what would you say is the big lesson that you took away from that now looking back?
So I would say some of the big lessons would be definitely get in contact with the tax office to understand, the future implications of buying this property. Because, what the issue we ran into is we bought it from a mom and pop landlord, and that's great. But the issue was he owned the property for 30 years, so it wasn't reassessed fairly based off sales. It was just reassessed based off historical data. So it really wasn't market. So essentially when we bought it, the value on the property doubled according to the tax office, essentially doubling our tax bill, right? So it's just like, that was definitely a lesson learned. I would say another lesson learned is like, I think especially in multifamily, like higher cap rate areas, the money is made in the management, right? And like, I would probably only invest in assets where I have direct control and management over, because, like 1 or 2, 3%, really pushes the needle on these assets.
Wow.
Got it. And those are really good, points, because, our listeners, some of them are just new at investing, and you share some really great strategies and, of course, your lessons. But, from a practical standpoint, for someone who's looking to just now start their investing journey, what sort of advice would you give them?
Well, like, first of all, I would go back to that concept I referred to earlier. What is your return on net worth, right? Like, look at your net worth holistically and see where is your money and how is it returning to you, right? And how can you reallocate that into real estate assets that can really leverage your return, right? So, I would start with that. And then that would lead me into trying to potentially do a house hack at a multifamily. Start with a couple, get them under your belt. They're very low risk. Like, you're going into a 3.5%, 5% down. A lot of times you can borrow against your 401k, borrow against your current equity, get a potential loan from your family. It's only a very small amount of money. And it really just can help acclimate you to the practice of being a real estate investor. And then once you slowly get a couple of these assets under your belt, then you can start taking on more complex projects, maybe more deep value add properties, maybe larger assets, right? But that's how I would kind of advise people who just want to get started in real estate. And then combined with that, like, go to as many real estate meetups as you possibly can. Like, your net worth is your network, right? So make sure you surround yourself around the right people, and amazing things will happen.
Definitely. That's also a great way to learn about good deals and opportunities and meeting the right service providers. So we agree completely with that approach. As you're looking forward, because you seem like someone who's always, educating yourself and staying on the edge of what's happening in our industry. So what are you looking for in the future in terms of how you're going to invest, or maybe different ways you would invest?
So, I think that's a big misconception in real estate investing, or investing in general. It's, I think the people who truly are successful in investing find successful formulas and lean into it, right? And don't get shiny object syndrome, and go to 20 other strategies and be average at every one of those strategies. Or I could be amazing at the one strategy I put 20, 30,000 hours into, right? So, buying value add deep value add portfolios at a deep discount, with hair, putting the sweat equity into getting it fixed, and, creating equity and sucking that on to buy more and more property. It's working for us. It's successful. And I'm just kind of lean into it more.
Definitely. I mean, once you carve out a niche, like you said, that's really where your expertise lies. And that's your competitive advantage, because if you go to a new market or a new asset type, you don't have all of that experience to bring. And so now you're not starting over, but you're definitely decreasing you're increasing the risk. And we're the whole part of investing, trying to decrease risk as much as possible. So
yeah, I mean, and I'll just give you a quick example. Like, I bought a 69-unit portfolio in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and I didn't have the team out there, I don't have the contractors, I don't have the network, right? And as a result, all of our jobs were more expensive. It was way more expensive to get everything done. I mean, ultimately, the portfolio made money, but not the level of efficiency that I expected.
Correct.
Exactly.
That's a key word there, is the efficiency that you create by staying within a niche or within your network. So totally agree with that strategy. And we'll leave you with one last question. You mentioned AI before. So is that something that you're seeing implement into your investing strategy through some of the technology platforms? How are you using AI, if at all?
So I'm big into personal development, and I was at a Tony Robbins event recently, and he had this whole concept, and actually from Dan Martell, Buy Back Your Time. And he mentioned, to truly be successful in this economy today, you have to be an AI first company, right? Like, everything has to lead with AI. And I wholeheartedly agree. Like, wherever you can incorporate AI, you absolutely should. Via ChatGPT with investor communications, via, taking tenant, intake calls or emergency calls with, virtual VAs versus an answering service. Like, anything you can do to incorporate AI will ultimately, allow you to be on the cutting edge, because it's coming whether you like it or not. You either want to go with the current or against it.
And it's the ultimate delegator, right? Going back to delegating. So that's one way that we've found, it's automation and delegation, to be more efficient in our business, because in real estate, your time is your biggest resource. So if you can find ways to become more efficient with it, you're going to be more successful. So we really appreciate everything that you shared with us today. You were able to pack in a lot of insight and a lot of knowledge into, a great conversation. So thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
And that's today's episode of The Buildup. If you love this conversation with Andrew Freed, subscribe, share, and join us next time as we continue building wealth one conversation at a time.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute tax, legal, or investment advice.
For specific recommendations, please consult with your financial, legal, or tax professional.
Always leaves your text on red. Leaves your text on red.
Built the corporate group with a $1,000 loan.
Tell us a little bit about how you actually came from.
Welcome to The Buildup, John Rowan.
Thanks for having me.
We're coming to you here from Studio 1873.
It's not 57% over $2.7 million.
So then, cheers.